What a weekend we had as the XFL and USFL both had games Saturday and Sunday, and we will have it once more this weekend as the XFL wraps up the regular season and the USFL heads into week 2. It is a big-time weekend for two XFL teams, the Seattle Sea Dragons and the St. Louis Battlehawks, both aiming at the North playoff spot. Now, here's how it shakes out. St. Louis hosts Orlando Saturday. Seattle visits Vegas Sunday. If St. Louis wins and Seattle loses, the Battlehawks are in the playoffs. If the opposite happens, Seattle goes to the postseason. Now, if both teams lose, St. Louis is in. If both teams win, okay, here's where it gets tricky. Pay attention. St. Louis will need to score 19 more points against Orlando than Seattle scores against Vegas and still have the most total points to clinch the playoff spot. So if both teams win, St. Louis needs to score 19 more points versus Orlando than Seattle scores against Vegas. And also, St. Louis must still rank first in total points to clinch. St. Louis has 196 total points. Seattle has 215. All right, joined now by the man who loves the XFL more than he does his future wife, official friend of the show now, XFL Jim, your second appearance. Thanks for joining me.
It is official now. I have been living on cloud nine for the last 9 weeks.
Right.
It's crazy to think that the season's already almost over.
And I mean, what a weekend we had too. I mean, as we go into this final weekend, I counted it up as, you know, we've talked about this being kind of the golden age of alt football, spring football. I watched, by my math, and I'm not a mathematician, I watched 7 1/6 games over Saturday and Sunday. How about you?
I watched 8.
You watched them all.
I watched everything. You can even there's literal recordings of me watching all of it.
You were just on Twitch and YouTube like the entire weekend. Did you ever leave?
Well, like I would take bathroom breaks from time to time, and then I would run up to get food. And then Sunday, I introduced a new aspect to it where there are now rules to the streams for the XFL and USFL where any pick six, missed field goal, or challenge, I have to tornado a beer. So I'd have to run up and tornado a beer.
How'd that work out for you?
11 beers tornadoed on Sunday. USFL kicking, still about as bad as we expected.
Oh my goodness! I mean, there's some open jobs there, but let's talk about the USFL here quick. I'm not going to say what you said you would let Case Cookus do to your future wife. You tweeted that out if anybody wants to see that, but it was good to see him back at quarterback for the Philadelphia Stars, Jim. It led the USFL this weekend with 3 touchdowns in that win over Memphis. Kind of spoiled the Showboats premiere down there. Used to be the Tampa Bay Bandits, but he looks like a contender again.
God, it looks like he hasn't missed a step since his injury. Yeah. He looks so good. The Stars look good. That defense looked like it's on track. And even though they lost and they had a lot of turnovers and they had a lot of penalties, I think the Showboats, aka the Bandits, look much more impressive this year than they did last year. I think that was the large scale takeaway from the USFL is that all the teams looked like they had improved for year 2. Showboats look good. Stars looked fantastic. What a great start. What a great way to start the season. That was a good game.
That was a great game. And I'll tell you my favorite moment of the weekend, though, it was in that – I'm an old softy, but it was in that final game, Pittsburgh and New Orleans. You had John DeFilippo, his first head coaching job. Now, he's got a spinal condition where it made it difficult for him to even run out on the field, but he said, I will run out on the field as a head coach in this first game, and he did. He was emotional. They win the game, and his dad is on the field hugging and crying. I mean, it's to me, stories like that makes spring football what it is.
Oh, it makes the whole thing beautiful. Like you see the emotion and like the coaches, the players, they're getting these shots, and that was an A+ moment and a great weekend. That might have been the top moment, just emotionally.
And what a great way to kind of cap everything off. It was, I don't know if you remember a lot of it because 11 beers, but you were still on it there, huh?
It was a great day, and I thought the Breakers looked pretty good. Yep. They still got a lot of kinks to work through. I think the Maulers definitely looked improved. They were the biggest question mark for me coming into the season, just because sans Kirby Wilson, I had no idea what that team could be. He just kind of lost that locker room week 1, and they never recovered. So they were the biggest unknown. They look good. Obviously, I knew both defensive lines were going to be good coming in. They looked fantastic. Maybe it's a combination of the D lines being stellar and the offensive lines needing a little bit of work. We saw, in my opinion, the three best teams probably had the most cohesion and leftover, like the most reusable offensive lines, the guys who played last year.
Yeah, I mean, we see depth now. We see them playing together for a second year. I think that makes for better football. USFL Season 1, I thought the football was good. I thought Season 2 looked really good. You bet these games, and you talk about it, and you can check out my other video there with XFL Jim as we talked before the XFL season. Jim, looking at Birmingham and New Jersey, the favorites right now at plus 300 on the money line to win the USFL Championship. New Orleans third at choice there at plus 500, Philly plus 550. You like those bets? I mean, we just talked about it. All these teams, they look solid at least after week 1.
They all look solid. I bet that Jersey line drops a little bit after week 1.
Yeah.
I don't, when I opened them up, I didn't like taking the Stallions or the Generals just because I don't like taking those short favorites. So I talked about this with a couple of people on my show. I liked the Stars. Love the Stars at plus 550. They were in the championship game last year. They return a ton. Case Cook is back. Bart Andrus is in my opinion, one of the top 3 coaches in all of spring football. I love the Stars. Their defense is great. I like the Breakers just because the Breakers were in it last year. They looked fantastic. Strong defense. They lose a little bit, but they still keep a lot of that offense. And I think they got the biggest upgrade at quarterback out of any team. So I like the Breakers in that middle pack. If I'm taking one long shot, though, if I have to pick one long shot, I kind of like the Panthers. Jeff Fisher seemed like he was out at the end. By week 3, he was already done with the league. Defense was stellar. I think that's still going to be a continuation. They improved at quarterback. They've just kind of improved offensively. If I'm taking one long shot, it's the Panthers.
Yeah, I like it. And they're going to have maybe a bit of a home field advantage this year, and that doesn't hurt.
It doesn't hurt. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how Memphis does, how Birmingham does actually having to go on the road for a change. They don't really have to go on the road till week 4, but it'll be interesting to see. And I want to see what kind of home field advantage Michigan has.
Yep.
Memphis seemed like they had a decent crowd there. I like that for the Showboats. Birmingham, we already know they're going to have a good crowd for the Stallions games. I also am very excited. I think week 2 we get to see Canton. And I want to see how Canton shows out for a couple of the teams.
It was always interesting. You know, I had Reed Johnson on here. Reed kind of poo-pooed Canton because he says he didn't think that there was another place that would be that really wanted that hub. But I like the whole Canton idea, and I'm looking forward. I actually have tickets coming up this spring to go check it out because I'll get to see the Pro Football Hall of Fame and get to see some USFL games.
I'm intrigued by it. I mean, I obviously went for the championship game last year. It was the environment there was amazing, and it was packed. I liked putting it in Canton. I wonder why you wouldn't try and do another hub for another home field advantage. I'm intrigued. I'm cautiously optimistic to be okay, none of these teams are from Ohio, but Canton seems to enjoy it's a fun thing to do. It's cheap. It's good for the family. You might get decent crowds there for both teams. It's just, it does kind of suck a little bit that neither of those two teams get any real home field.
Yeah, that's true. It'll be interesting to see if there's going to continue to be a turnout. You're right. They had playoffs up there in the championship, great crowds. Let's see what happens as we go through the regular season. Let's switch to the XFL now. And honestly, Jim, you got to have a beautiful mind to figure out what the playoff scenariyo is.
There's 2 teams that are locked in. There's 2 teams that are locked in, and we're good.
We know that, and before we started here, I went over the playoff scenario with Seattle and St. Louis. But this weekend, though, how about you've got 4 teams who can claim a spot, and somehow, and through all this, the insanity, San Antonio still somehow has a shot.
It's a long shot for San Antonio.
Yeah.
It's a long one. They need to win, and they need the Renegades to lose. Which is very possible because the Renegades are playing the are playing the Roughnecks. But I will say, I've been talking with my buddies. Since adding Luis Perez, the Renegades are like a reborn team. The offense looks competent. The defense still is one of the best defenses in the league. The Renegades have a shot to make a run here and be very interesting. I kind of like them against Houston a little bit this weekend.
Yeah. All right. Hey, I get how much, and they mentioned this on the broadcast, how much in command did Luis Perez look out there? I mean, he looked like he'd been playing all season.
If there is ever a spring football Mount Rushmore, he's going on there in my opinion. He's played in like every spring football league. He's looked good in all of them. Put him on there.
Yeah, he's number one. I mean, I'm sure there are three others we could figure out pretty quickly, but Luis Perez is like, there's no question. He is a first ballot Mount Rushmore. He's played in every spring league there is, and looked good. I was kind of surprised that I think he got out of a bad situation, frankly, and got put in a much better one. It's certainly what it looked like at least this weekend, right?
It seems that way. I think Bob Stoops and the Hayes brothers, they run a tighter ship. It seems they have a little bit better management. I was talking both Vegas and Orlando. I was trying to be nice and high on them all throughout the year. I like Rod Woodson. I like Terrell Buckley. They're the bottom two teams for a reason. You see, like, they have really good players. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of really good talent. And Vegas has looked better these last few weeks. But man, at the end of games, just some of the coaching decisions just baffles my mind. Why they decide to do that? Some of the challenges are weird. The clock management is terrible, and I don't know.
I agreed. I mean, it's like the clock management, especially. There were so many questions with that, but you're right. They're the bottom two teams for a reason. I think Vegas. I agree with you. They've got more upside. As much upside as you can have going into the final week of the season when you're eliminated. But, assuming that if that core comes back and the XFL returns, I would still tend, unless there's some major changes that happen in Orlando, I'd still take Vegas over Orlando.
I think both of them had a huge upside. I think Quentin Dormady has shown that he's potentially, like, if he keeps this up, he was playing like this the whole season, he'd be a top 2, top 3 quarterback in the league. The offense for the Guardians was great. If you're going by decision making, the perfect example, I have 2 examples of why these teams are terrible. Number 1 was 2 weeks ago when the Guardians they score a touchdown and are down 3 and they elect to just go for 1 and then they kick the ball. I was so dumbfounded that he would decide to do that. I was screaming at him. And then all you have to do is go back to, I think, like week 4 or 5, when they played each other, when Vegas and Orlando played each other. The last 2 minutes of that game is some of the dumbest football I have ever seen at any level. It's just who wants to lose more. And I don't know what will change or what needs to change. I like both the teams. They have some talent, but dang.
No question. Yeah, you know what? You do bring up a good point there with Orlando. It was like team turmoil there toward the end. Quentin Dormady was off the team for allegedly giving away plays, and then that wasn't the case.
It was a hilarious story.
It was insane. But at the beginning, too, you're right. I don't know how he wasn't playing because it felt like Terrell Buckley was ride or die with Paxton Lynch, and that was never going to work.
You should never be ride or die with Paxton Lynch. Never. Ever.
I think in Orlando.
We learned this. There are certain players in spring football or almost any level of football you don't be ride or die with. Paxton Lynch, Aaron Murray, and Christian Hackenberg. You do not ride or die with those 3. Those are death knells to your franchise.
Those are some AAF all-stars right there. Whoa. Let's talk. It really was an historic weekend. I mean, it was just incredible. The work you did was great, especially working on those beers. You and I are spring football degenerates, and everything on the line this weekend. We're going to see the debut of the Canton Hub. I think we've really got another, as awesome as last weekend was, Jim, I think this weekend could be just as good, if not better, because of everything that's on the line.
It very well could be. So this last weekend in particular, but I think in the XFL, I would say the last 3 weeks have been stellar. It feels like every game has come down to the wire, which is what you really want in a spring football league. Even though Vegas and Orlando are eliminated, and even though they make stupid decisions, the games are still coming down to we're getting overtimes. We're getting last second drives. It's been exciting. And then this last week with the USFL Week 1 happening, it was just crazy. It was fun. Week 2 for the USFL is going to be nuts. And then Week 10, the storylines continue. Every game is a must-win for every team. It's wild. And then we get the playoffs.
I mean, it's so good. What more could we even ask for? XFL Jim, you can check him out. Twitter, YouTube, Twitch. He's on everything, and he's usually live from the garage with all this stuff. And I appreciate you taking the time. I know it was a brutal weekend for you, but man, we had a lot of fun this weekend, and it's going to
be a great week this week too, because I think I'm unveiling XFL Jim versus USFL Jim this week.
Oh, it's time. They don't like each other very much either,
the
right?
battle of the century is happening.
Looking forward to it. Check him out. XFL Jim, thanks for joining me here.
Anytime.